The eyes are the windows of the soul, and therefore are probably going to be the focal point of your artwork. Today, we're going to run through 15 tricks in under 15 minutes to make your eyes look a whole lot more realistic. This is effing art. Okay, so here's our starting eye. It's fairly basic, but not a bad shape. Be fine for maybe in a cartoon or a comic book, but we're going to make this look a lot more realistic in just 15 minutes. So for what we want, these eyelashes are pretty severe. So I'm going to get rid of them for now. We'll come back to them later. I'm going to rattle through these steps fairly quickly, so my work might be a little bit rough. You can take a lot more time over yours if you need to. And if there's anything you'd like a more detailed tutorial on, please whack it in the comment section below and let me know. The first thing we're going to add is the caruncle. That's the weird fleshy ball in the corner of your eye. So I'm just going to take a fleshy pink colour, fill it in, following the curve of the eyeball, and then I'm just going to add a tiny little bit on the opposite corner, and that'll do for now. So to determine the size of the eyeball, we're going to take the circle of the iris and extend it out to the corners of the eye. The eyeball is about 3 times the diameter of the iris. Now unfortunately this only works so well if the eye's looking straight at you. But hitting both corners of the eye with your outer circle is always a good guide. Using this guide, we can now begin shading the skin around the eye. Don't stick too closely to the circle. We need to allow for the thickness of the skin atop the eyeball. This is the time you might want to start thinking about the lighting of your scene and the shadows cast. But for the purposes of this video, we're just going to keep it fairly simple. Some more shading on the upper eyelid, beneath the fold. And then a little bit more across the fold itself, not worrying about the shape of the eyeball here. Then I'm just going to have a quick whiz round with a blending tool just to smooth things out, and then we'll be ready for the next step. Next, we're going to tackle the white of the eye, bearing 2 things in mind. 1, we want to enhance the ball shape of the eye, and 2, the white of the eye is not white. The actual colour you'll use will depend on the lighting of the scene or your character. I'm going to go for a quite unsaturated blue, but you could use a yellow, touch of red, whatever you think you need. Using this colour, I'm going to shade the whites of the eyes to make them less bright and make the eyeball look more round. As with all painting, it's useful to have your brush strokes follow the line of the surface you're on. Here, I'm following the line of the ball to help shape the eye. Quick go with my trusty blending tool, and we're ready to move on. Although there is naturally a darker outline to an iris, this one's a little bit severe, so I'm going to tone it down and then we'll deal with the iris itself. To maintain the original colour of the eye, I'm going to recolour the iris in a darker shade. You might also notice I've left a tiny brighter line around the pupil that we'll come back to later. The details are in the form of radial lines going around the pupil in the original iris colour. Like this. In fact, the iris is an incredibly complicated structure, but depending on how close you are to the eye in your picture, this amount of detail should serve you well. To add further depth and realism to your iris, I like to do another round of radial lines in a lighter colour around the bottom half of the pupil and a few around the top half in a darker colour. And I'm just going to take a few seconds now to neaten up the outside of the iris before we go to the next step. It's important to remember the thickness of the eyelids, and as such will cast a shadow across the eyeball. I'm just going to represent that here with this darker line, and then run over it with the blending tool, and this one will be done. Or let's try that again, and this one will be done. At all times, I'm remembering the shape of the ball as I go. For shadows and highlights, it can be important to remember that the iris is in fact a flat surface. And also, it's easy to forget that the pupil is in fact a hole through the iris. As such, the edge of this will catch the light. I left a slightly brighter edge to it earlier, but I'm also going to add this little highlight here, just to emphasize that more. The total black of the pupil, covered by the lens, makes it one of the most reflective areas of the eye. So address this by adding even the most subtle of horizons like I'm doing here. If you know what else is in your scene, or what your character is looking at, you could add even more detail. Nothing's going to bring your eyes to life more than some big shiny highlights. So this is where you might want to consider where your light sources are or what else is in the scene. However, if you don't have to worry about that, like I don't today, you can just make some up and put them where you think they'll look good. I'm just going to make stark white shapes, slightly blur the edges, and we're done. To make the eye look wet, I'm going to use a thin bright white line across part of the lower eyelid where it meets the eye, a little bit on the caruncle, and a little highlight there, and that's that done. Don't forget, the lower eyelid has a thickness too. So if you're observing the eye from the front, like here, you're going to see a ridge across the bottom. I'm going to represent that now with a slightly different coloured line in the flesh tones along the lower eyelid, shaded to match the following of the ball of the eye. I've just wiped out a little bit of my wet look, so I'm just going to put that back in. It's worth remembering that looking at the eye this way, you will see that line. But if you're observing it from maybe lower, you may need to do this on the upper eyelid instead. Okay, let's bring back the eyelashes from before. Yeah, far too stark and graphic for our purposes, but we want to keep the shape that was originally there. So get those out of the way, and I'm going to take a very thin black brush and just draw the eyelashes in individually in little groups of 3, making little points like so. I'm curving the eyelashes out from under the upper eyelid to give them the correct curve shape. All the while, keeping in mind the original shape of the eyelashes that I'm going for. Now, the length, thickness, and frequency of eyelashes are going to depend on your character choices, makeup options, etc. Here I'm just going to darken the line in behind the upper eyelashes just to give the hint of some makeup and leave things there. Now onto the lower eyelashes. Now instead of coming out from the side of the eye like on the upper, they're going to come out from the ridge we did in the last step. They're also going to be shorter and fewer than on the upper eyelid, just like so. Of course, we need to add shadows for the eyelashes. Now again, this is going to depend on where your light source is coming from. For this eye, I'm just going to put these little lines in here, blend them out slightly, and then we're done. Okay, let's tackle these eyebrows. Now you might just be able to make out that I'm colouring over the eyebrow just a slightly darker patch that's slightly smaller than where the eyebrow is. When I've finished that, I'm going to erase the original eyebrows, leaving me with the shape roughly where the eyebrows are, where I want them. It's a pretty messy shape, so I'm just going to fix that a little bit and make it a little bit neater. Now, hair in general is a tricky thing, and the best way to find it is to find a nice brush with a nice texture on it, like this one, and then we can go to work. Taking a slightly lighter brown than the shape that's already there, I'm going to go over the top, defining the hairs and where they go. All the while keeping in mind what direction the hairs are going. I'm going to go slightly larger than the shape that's there to disguise the edges of it and work the way along. Following that, I'm going to go at it again with a slightly lighter colour, slightly more defined, and repeat the process. I'm going to neaten up the edges a little bit with an eraser tool, and then our eyebrows are kind of finished. Normally, I'd probably spend a little bit longer on this, but let's just keep it moving and on to the last tip. Taking a really thin brush and a lighter shade of the hair colour again, just add a few little hairs into the eyebrows as highlights. Again, always thinking about where your light source is coming from. I'm also just going to add a few highlights to a few of the eyelashes, and that's it for the last tip. And there we are, 15 tricks. Every time I'm painting an eye, I think of all these things, see which ones apply, put them into practice. Gives me a place to make sure my eyes are looking as realistic as possible. Just going to take this minute to clean up. Add a bit of shadow to form a nose. And then we'll look at where we started and where we've got to. Okay, and here's our finished eye. Let's go back and look at where we started. I hope you can see that these 15 tricks have made a world of difference to the finished eye. And I hope there's at least one or two there you can take away to improve your art. I'd love you to let me know in the comment section which parts you like the best. And if there's any more tutorials you'd like to see or any expansions on anything in this video, put it in the comment section as well, and we'll see what we can do. And of course, we're on YouTube, so if you could like this video, that'd be great. Subscribe to the channel, do a notification bell, whatever that is. Come and check us out. We're going to do more tutorials. There's speed paint, art challenges, and more to come. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. I hope you take it away, put it into practice, and then hopefully you'll get more than an F in art.